Hello and welcome to Newscentre. I am Ashmit Kumar. Now, days after India and the United States wrapped up their latest round of interim trade talks, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has said that the US negotiating team is expected to return to India later this month. Goyal also said that both sides could be in a position to finalize an interim trade deal during the next round of engagements. He indicated that something may be likely perhaps by the middle of next month, July. He added that the proposed pact would provide preferential access for Indian exports to the US market. He also said that India is expecting a high-level US delegation that's in the coming few weeks, signaling continued momentum in these negotiations. Now, while Goyal described the discussions as excellent, a joint statement from both countries said that the talks were constructive and positive and marked by a spirit of cooperation and pragmatism. Now, the discussions covered a wide range of issues, including trade in goods, non-tariff measures, customs and trade facilitation, as well as economic security. The two countries have reaffirmed their commitment to reach a mutually beneficial agreement that deepens bilateral trade and economic ties. However, the talks took place against the backdrop of fresh US tariff proposals under Section 301 of the US Trade Act. The measures target more than 60 countries over alleged unfair trade practices, with India facing a proposed 12.5% levy. New Delhi says that it has raised these concerns over Section 301 during these talks and that they were taken into account while the delegation was here. Now, the US delegation, led by Chief Negotiator Brendan Lynch, was in India for a 4-day visit beginning June 1st. Meanwhile, US State Department spokesperson Tommy Pigott has said that Washington remains optimistic about the progress of trade talks with India, adding that a bilateral trade deal continues to be a key priority for the Trump administration.
We had excellent discussions from 2nd to 4th of this month. We had a full team of officials from different divisions of trade from USA in Delhi. I also met with them yesterday, and we are fast moving towards closing all the open ends, and I think by sometime by the middle of next month or so, we should be in a position to execute a very, very vibrant first tranche. It is only the first tranche of our bilateral trade agreement, which will give preferential access to India over our competitors.
Well, for more on this, we're now joined by Anjali Prasad, former ambassador to the World Trade Organization. Also joining us shortly will be Ajay Sahai, DG and CEO of FIEO, as well as Mr. Robinder Sachdev, President at Imagindia Institute. To all our panelists, thank you so much for joining us. Ms. Prasad, let me come to you. First indication from the Indian side that perhaps an interim deal may be around the corner. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal saying perhaps by the mid of July is when we can expect to finalize this interim trade deal, saying that there will be another high-level US delegation visiting India in the weeks to come. Your quick first thoughts on the clarification coming in from Mr. Piyush Goyal.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, these are normal negotiating statements that are made. Talks were constructive, discussions were pragmatic, and so on and so forth. He also seems to say that we will get preferential access to the US market for some of our products. Now, if the interim draft or the deal is anything to go by, then I really don't know how we will get preferential access, because in that information that was available publicly, we were to bring down our tariffs and non-tariff barriers to zero, whereas the US would have duties on our products at 18%. Also, we were to buy goods worth $550 billion from the US over a certain period of time, whereas currently we are buying goods around $50 billion. So a 10 times increase. We were to place all our agriculture products and other sensitive products, as well as our, certain critical minerals on the table. So I don't know what kind of preferential access this is and what kind of balanced agreement this is where one party goes down to 0 and the other remains at 18. Also,
Sure.
we are facing this threat of a 12.5% a penal tariff under their section 301. Now, we don't know whether this will at all go through or not go through, because this is subject to certain legal procedures which are yet to go through. And both parties, the concerned party is allowed to put their point of view across. But my sense is that because the Supreme Court ruled against the penal tariffs that President Trump had imposed earlier, they are now trying to make that up through Section 301. So I am not very sure of a very positive outcome. In other words, I am not as optimistic as the Commerce Minister seems to be.
Ms. Prasad, one follow-up question. Again, the minister there indicating that by mid of July, we may have an interim deal. Just yesterday, we were speaking to Mark Linscott. He was negotiating as a part of the Trump 1 administration. And importantly, what he said is that July 24th is a drop-dead date. If India has not struck an interim deal by then, it could potentially be looking at significantly higher tariffs, higher than its local Asian peers. So are we in a situation where a bad deal is better than no deal?
Frankly, we have to weigh the pros and cons of a bad deal versus a no deal. Often a no deal is better than a bad deal. Very often that is the case. But we need to actually see the fine print, which is not available to us. As I told you, the interim agreement, or the framework as they call it, makes India go down to 0, whereas the US remains at 18. How is this a good deal or a bad deal, or can we at all call it a deal? I think it's a completely, I don't want to use that word, but it would be a complete given on our part.
Sure. Mr. Sahai, let me get your perspective. You stand to get most impacted by these tariffs as and when they do come into effect. What has your understanding been of these trade negotiations? What is the kind of clarity that you've sought from the minister? Any recent communications you might have had with the Commerce Ministry?
We are not having any communication, but we are definitely encouraged by the fact that Minister is saying that by July, some interim deal may be in place. And since he's saying that India will get a preferential treatment, I'm expecting that the tariff on India will be quite competitive as compared to our competitors. And we would like to have a certainty also in place, because at this point of time, exporters are not in a position to negotiate what will happen to the contract which will come into force after 24th of July. And we are looking for some certainty on that front. DTA will definitely provide a certainty. I agree with the fact that probably we are in a situation where we may not be getting 0 for 0, but that's the situation today. Today also Indian export and exports of most of the countries are paying 10% plus MFN. Their US import is only subject to MFN. So that kind of anomaly we are in, and we won't mind if some certainty comes on that front.
If I can just come in there, Mr. Sahai, again on that issue of certainty, I'll ask you the same question I asked Ms. Prasad, that would you rather prefer a bad deal with certainty, or perhaps no deal with greater uncertainty?
I would like to have a deal which meets the national interest, and if it meets the national interest, I personally feel it's a good deal only. And once it's a good deal, I'm pretty sure the interest of the exporters will be taken care by the deal.
Sure. Mr. Sachdev, let me come to you again. The issue that Ms. Prasad was alluding to, which is with respect to, of course, Section 301, the tariffs which are currently underway, only at a proposal stage, not having been finalized. Tell us, is there precedent for perhaps a carve-out in a trade negotiation that US has allowed to any one of its trade partners protection from any additional tariffs in the future?
Well, that's a deep question. I think perhaps the master would be much better placed to answer than me, but I will take it in the spirit and continue there. See, the whole thing, I find it extremely puzzling. there are negotiations going on between India and the US on trade, whereas the background is that on 24th July, the present 10% tariff would be gone, and a new regime will kick in. And in that new regime, they are going to have tariffs under Section 232 and Section 301. That is absolutely clear as sky. That's what Trump wants. The day the reciprocal tariffs were struck down, he realized, or his advisors think, that there are three methods they have to take unilateral action by the president. One was 10 to 15% or 10% on a balance of payment issue for 150 days. So he immediately switched that on. The other two, Section 232 and 301, that very day, he ordered an investigation or a research or a due diligence for both these sections to see how the world is mistreating the US or unfair. Because that is a due process they have to go through under 232 to place anyone, and under 301 anyone. So now this 150-day period is getting over on the 24th of next month. We do not know as to what discoveries are being made by under 301. Right now it's only forced labor. Under 301 they're also investigating excess structural capacity in the country. For all we know, they may go down and look into the IPR regime in the country. Right, they may say IPR regime.
Which in fact is a very big concern, that so far we only have clarity on one of the two 301 investigations. The fate, of course, is
and also
with respect to
232.
the second investigation.
So in the absence of all of this, how can we be negotiating right now? I mean, I find that strange. What are we negotiating?
Ms. Prasad, again, just looking for clarity, what are the kind of protections that India can insist on as a part of a carve-out of that interim trade deal, that there will be protection to Indian exporters from any future levies like this one, like 301 that we're looking at?
If you give me a minute, I'll just, clarify this point. The Section 301 to 310 of the U.S. Trade and Competitiveness Act of 1974 have all these unilateral, provisions which the U.S. president can invoke. This was taken to dispute by the European Union in 1998 in the WTO. And the US then put in a caveat that they would invoke these measures only in compliance with the WTO rules. Now, where are the WTO rules? We don't know, because Mr. Trump is not playing by any rules. Secondly, I agree with my previous panelist entirely that you have a penal provision which is an extraterritorial use of a domestic law, which is not allowed. It would be like saying India will use the Indian Penal Code in the United States of America. Can you do that? You can't. So this is what they are actually doing. And what are we negotiating in that case? We are completely, first of all, we are still sticking with that 18%. That 18% was part of a come down from that penal tariff that they had imposed. Now, the negotiations of this kind, which are bilateral in nature, always take place from applied tariffs. And applied tariffs of the US were 3.3 to 5% on an average, depending on products. And now they are going to impose 18%, is what the earlier framework agreement was, unless all that is done away with. And now we stick to this 12.5, etc. But even then, my previous speaker, Mr. Sachdev, is very right in saying that tomorrow they could impose Special 301, which is on intellectual property rights. And in the 1990s, we faced an investigation under Special 301 where the US withdrew GSP preferences from a number of Indian products. But they withdrew GSP preferences because that was their prerogative. The GSP is the prerogative of a country. It's not our right to have GSP. But to have MFN tariff is our right under the WTO law. So we really don't know what we are negotiating in this atmosphere.
Right, Ms. Prasad. A lot of questions there remain unanswered. But again, the only clarity we have coming in from Mr. Piyush Goyal is that there will be another senior high-level delegation arriving in India shortly, before the end of this month. And perhaps an interim deal may seem workable, may be finalized by the middle of next month. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us, but it's time now for heading into a very short break. Coming up next, the U.S. brokered renewed ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has collapsed after Israel launched deadly strikes in Lebanon just hours after the truce was announced. We discuss that and more on the other side.